Okay, well welcome. Thanks for joining us to celebrate International Women's Day today. Some quick facts of one of my colleagues. I don't know if you were here last year, but I talked about gender equality and how long it would take to get there, and apparently that was a bit of a downer, so I'm not going to go down that way this day. But did you know that it was in 1911 when the first IWD sort of celebration took place, and 1 million people took part? It was Denmark, Austria, Switzerland, basically a number of the European nations. And here we are in 2019, and it's a pretty big deal across the world. And I think for me, I've been going to various activities for IWD for a number of years, and what I love about it is that it's not just a women's thing anymore. There's loads of men who attend as well, which I think is really one of the core things in terms of our male champions of change. So good to see you all here today. Anyway, we're very fortunate to have Gemma Sisia today to talk about her school that she started in Tanzania. And I'm not going to share with you some of the stories of that. I've done a bit of background reading. But you know, our values are be courageous, do what matters. And isn't it amazing? You started sort of life in a rural setting, and I bet you didn't think then that you'd be doing what you're doing today. So it just goes to show. So welcome, enjoy, and hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and sincere appreciation from everybody at St Jude's for inviting me to come and speak to you today. I'm really excited to tell you all about the School of St Jude, which started back in 2002. Now, where are we? We are in Tanzania, which is in East Africa. Now, most people come to our part of the world for safaris, so we get literally millions of tourists from all over the globe coming to our area to see Ngorongoro Crater and all the wildlife that East Africa has on offer. A lot of people also like to climb Kilimanjaro, which is the highest mountain in Africa. The closest I'll get is really dropping people at the gate and saying good luck. But in actual fact, Mount Kilimanjaro International Airport is only about 20 minutes drive from our secondary school, so there's no excuses for you not coming to visit. Behind, however, the nice tourist hotels and the good roads to the airport is the reality. People in our area are very, very poor, and so that's why you'll also find the schools of St Jude in the same vicinity. Now, a lot of people have asked me, how did I get there and how did all this begin? I grew up near Armidale on a superfine merino property with 7 very wild brothers. I think that taught me a lot of survival skills, pretty much from birth. But after university, so I'm a high school math science teacher, and after university I worked for a few years in Africa. And you know, when you're young and, you know, under 25, you think you know everything and you're infallible, and in actual fact you have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, I thought it'd be really great to build a private school for the local people there, but a private school that would be free of charge. I wish I did a business plan, but you know, I didn't think that was important. So I came back to Australia and told Mum and Dad that I'm going to build a free school in Africa, and you can imagine how that went down. But a great friend of mine in Armidale gave me my first donation, which was $10. And you can imagine with so many brothers how much flack that would get. They'd go, well, how much do you need for your school, Gem? And I'd go, well, I don't know, a couple of $100K, and well, us way off there. Well, how much you got? $10. But anyway, my dad introduced me to Rotary and a lot of good people like you, and so we started the construction of the school. So this is a picture of the original piece of land that we were to build the school on, and then a group of friends from around Armidale area headed over to Tanzania to build the first classrooms. So this is the first classroom block. We then did another classroom block, and then we were ready for opening. Now, the children at the School of St Jude come there free of charge because we give them academic scholarships. Every school in the world really has different missions. A school might be about educating girls, or about educating boys. It could also be about creating the best football players, or it could have an emphasis on art or music. The School of St Jude's mission is to find children who are really gifted and very, very bright, but who would never have the means to go to a good private school, and we give them scholarships. Now, Then how do we fund those scholarships is we come out to Australia and find great people to fund them. Now, when I started the school, the only people I could rope into funding a scholarship for me was really family and friends who couldn't get out of saying no. And so this picture is the total school enrolment that we had when we opened the school in 2002. So a total number of 3 kids attended the school. But we didn't give up. Since then, we've been solidly fundraising, raising awareness. You'll be very proud to know that over 90% of our income comes from Australia. So nobody can tell me that Australians are not philanthropic. About 97 cents in every dollar gets to Tanzania. That's because we've got really good people here in Australia who give their time free of charge to do all the accounting and all the office work free of charge. And, you know, for example, David is based in Melbourne. He does all the accounting and finance for the school. We've got Maddie, who's sitting down the back, who's doing her bit by actually working at the school, and she's on the road with us. So it's thanks to our great Aussie volunteers that pretty much all the money arrives at the school in Tanzania. We then spend that money to build more classrooms and more boarding houses, employ more staff, and ultimately our goal is to enrol more students. Now, what does the school look like now? So the schools at St Jude, currently we've got about 1,800 students from grade 1 through to year 12. Those students are split between 3 campuses. So the top campus is our original campus, that's our primary campus. The middle one is our secondary campus, where we have about 1,000 secondary students. And then the bottom is our boarding campus for primary. All up, we have about 1,400 students in boarding and about 250 staff. Over the years since building St Jude's, I've also got a private personal project that's also been growing on the side. So I married Richard, who, surprise, surprise, has a safari company, given where we live. And we have 4 kids, from Nathaniel, who's 17, down to the boss of the family, and that's Louisa, and she's 6. So that's a little project growing on the side as well. Over the years, we've worked really, really hard. Even though these kids are coming from Africa, I don't believe they should be educated in mud huts. So I've always tried to build the best classrooms, get the best teachers that we can get, given the local labour market. So now St Jude's has become quite a strong brand in East Africa, especially for charitable education. We have HSC type exams every year, and our students work really hard towards those exams because it determines what university and course they can get into. Remember, our school is basically a selective school, so we expect our kids to do really, really well academically, but also there is a behavioural component to these scholarships as well. I'm proud to tell you, however, that in a recent national exams, we had over 170 students do the HSC equivalent exams, and every single one of those kids got a grade 1, which is the highest division you can get in Tanzania in a national exam. The boy on the right actually is Samson. He actually got number 1 out of all the students, over 1 million candidates in the country. Edwin on the left got number 10, and Lightness in the middle, who's a real sweetie, she even got a division 1. And she is pretty special because she writes with her feet. She actually doesn't, her hands don't work. But these are the types of kids that all of you in Australia is helping to educate on the other side of the world. I think it's really wonderful that today is International Women's Day, because we actually have more girls in the school than boys. We have about 60% of the girls in the school, 60% student population are girls compared to about 40% boys. I have to be honest, we don't mean it to be like that. It doesn't actually matter whether a girl is, you know, whether a student is a girl or a boy, or what tribe they are or religion they are. As long as they can pass the entrance tests and the poverty test, then they get a scholarship. We're simply finding that more girls are passing the entrance tests. In Tanzania, we don't have very many secondary schools, and so we are currently about 3/4 of the way through the process of registering another school, which we hope to open in January next year. And again, I think it's apt, given what today is. It will be a boarding school for 600 secondary girls. So it will be a single-sexed girls' secondary school opening next year. So that will really blow out the percentages of student numbers. When I started the school, many of our teachers were great volunteer teachers from Australia, but we've worked really hard at getting good Tanzanian staff. So now all of our teachers are Tanzanian, right up through to the heads of departments, deputies and headmasters. They are assisted by a strong student government, and they work to oversee everything on their campuses, from all the teaching and all the meals. We cook over 1.2 million hot meals at the schools each year. So there's a lot of food being cooked. All the excursions, remember we've got a great lot of national parks in our area. Sports, art, music, everything on their campus. We also have a great belief in transparency. We want visitors to come and visit the school. We are actually expecting about 1,500 Aussies to come and stay with us this year. It's always wonderful when you have a visitor and they ride on the bus that they've helped to pay the tyres for, or they meet the child that they're paying for a scholarship for. We actually have very simple accommodation at the school for about 70 people. This is a typical room, for example, where you get your own bed, toilet and shower and mozzieette. You just don't walk out into a nice foyer with soft music and a water fountain. You just walk out onto the playground. But it would be great if one time, in the future, you come over and do a safari, you can come and stay at the school for a few days, because this is truly an Australian funded project. A lot of people think it's just the children who benefit, but it's not just the kids who benefit. You can imagine all the men and women who are feeding off our budget. Our fundraising budget this year, sadly, is a little bit more than the $10. I wish it was just $10, but it's now about 5.2 million US that we need to raise each year. And so you can imagine all the families, for example, and all the farmers in our area that are growing all the thousands of tons of cabbages and cucumbers and growing all the chickens and cows that go into those meals. All the men and women who are sitting at their Singer sewing machines, the pedal sewing machines, making all the hundreds of uniforms for the kids to wear. There are a lot of people in our community who feed off the St. Jude's budget. Some people ask me, and I don't know if you're interested, how do we work out who gets the scholarships? How do we actually sift through all the students? This morning we were at a school around near Rose Bay, Kambala, and it's a beautiful private school. And just think, if that school was free, how many people would apply for it? I think half of the state would apply for it. So we have the same problem at St. Jude's. We get thousands of kids applying for our scholarships because it's a private school, but it's free of charge. So how do we work out who gets the scholarships? We have to look at our mission. Our mission is finding bright, poor kids. So the kids come in. We actually bring in children from grade 1. If you're not successful in getting a grade 1 scholarship, you can have another go at the beginning of Form 1, which is secondary. If you're not successful there, you can have another go at year 11. So they come in and then they do a series of entrance papers, and then there's a documents check stage. So if they pass the entrance test, they then have to pass the documents check. And that's when we look at their background. So for example, are they coming from a private school? If they're coming from a private school, they're not eligible for a scholarship. Are they 15, pretending to be 7 to go into grade 1? So these are the types of things that we've got to look in their background. If they pass the background check, then there's a series of poverty checks. So we send a number of staff out to their homes when they don't know when we're coming, over a series of months, to make sure that they are genuinely poor enough. Do they have electricity, for example? If a family has electricity, they would be considered too wealthy for the program. Do they have more than 2 rooms in their house? Do they have glass in their windows? Do they have any other type of floor other than a dirt or cement floor? These are the types of criteria that one would need in order to pass the poverty test. By the time we get to December, we have found, for primary, we normally bring in about 50 or 60 students. Then we bring in another 40 or 50 kids into Form 1, and usually about 20 or 30 into Year 11. But for grade 1, by the time we get to December, we have worked out who's going to get the scholarships. We bring them into the school, we give them a uniform, and then we send them out to their parents. Whilst we are bringing students into grade 1, we're very excited that finally we've got a first year 12s out. So remember, we started with 3 kids many years ago. That year level finally reached year 12 in 2015. We're very excited that there were more than 3 of them by the time they reached year 12. There were about 60 of them, and this is a picture of them. Since then, those students have moved on to university, and this is basically a spread of the types of courses where they're doing, what they're studying. We have a huge shortage of doctors, engineers, math science teachers, agricultural specialists in Tanzania. So they're the types of professionals that we're trying to produce at the school. Since 2015, about 130 students have been coming out of the school every single year, but we're hoping that once the girls' school opens next year, that will take it to about 250 students coming out of Year 12 each year. Whilst the students are working out what they would like to do at uni after they finish Year 12, many of them, almost all of them, would like to participate in a community service gap type year. It's a year where they use their skills that they were lucky enough to attain thanks to their scholarship to benefit their community. Our government schools in our area, sadly, are not very well resourced. They don't have a lot of teachers. They don't have a lot of teaching resources like textbooks and stationery books. You've got classes of 70, 80 kids in a class. And so many of our students opt to work in the government schools for the year. So Emmanuel, for example, just finished Year 12 last year, and currently he is teaching chemistry and mathematics in a secondary school near St. Jude's. We've got Catherine, who is teaching business and commerce in another secondary school. You might think, you know, how can these Year 12 kids all of a sudden go out and teach, you know, in government schools? That gives you an idea of how desperate our schooling is in the country. But more importantly, you know, it's a year where they can give back. And so what happens, you know, logistically or practically, what happens is they finish their Year 12 year and then they go and sleep for a couple of weeks after their HSC equivalent exams. And then they come in for a 1-week crash teaching course. So in that week, we teach them how to do a lesson plan, scheme of works, logbooks. We give them some boxes of chalk, some textbooks, and then we kick them out to a government school. So we've got Catherine, Ellie Baricki, you know, and between all the Year 12s who came out of St. Jude's last year, between them all, they're teaching over 10,000 kids in the government secondary system. I would love to be able to bring over all of our students to Australia, obviously to say thanks to all of you for helping to spread the word. You know, we wouldn't even be here, I think, without Faye. You know, Peter, the CEO, we wouldn't even be here. So thanks to you sort of sticking your neck out. Look how many more people know about the school. So it's really wonderful for International Women's Day that you're able to, you know, help spread the word. But I was able to bring one student out, and I would like to introduce you to Godwin. Godwin finished Year 12 last year. He's currently teaching. You want to come up, Godwin? He's currently teaching physics and mathematics to Year 12, Year 11 and Year 9.
Thank you. So my name is Godwin Silayo, a graduate from St. Jude, and I'm also the firstborn in my family, which includes my mom, myself, and my young sister called Maureen. Currently, mom is working as a gardener, and my young sister is in grade 6 at Mringa Primary Government School. So I actually went to the same government school as Maureen, and like most Tanzanian government schools, they do not have textbooks, enough teachers, and also they do not provide meals. So each day, it would reach 12 p.m. and I would be so hungry. I always had a thought of going home to drink the porridge that mom would cook. Sadly, my father left us when I was very young, and so mom was a single parent. She struggled so much just to provide Maureen and I with food and clothes, and she even rented a one-room mud hut for us to live in. She was unable also to get secondary education because her schooling stopped when she finished primary school, but because of this, she believed education was the only weapon I had to escape from the poverty that we were in. So we would even skip meals so that she could save money to buy her school uniforms. Luckily, I did well in my primary national exams, and I was invited by St. Jude to apply for a secondary scholarship. And as you can see, I was not alone. So almost 1,000 students from government schools were also invited to compete for approximately 25 Form 1 scholarships. So the selection process was really tough, but I'm glad mom encouraged me a lot, and I passed well the interest test. And then some St. Jude staff came into my home to do an interview with my family to see if I would pass the poverty part of the scholarship application process. What next is that I was waiting for the result, and I was really nervous, but happily I was told I had been one of the lucky students offered a scholarship at St. Jude. And I'm sure all of you will agree that I looked handsome in my new uniform. So coming to St. Jude, it was a paradise to me. I had 3 meals a day. enough teachers and learning resources, and I even had my own bed in boarding. And after working hard for 6 years, I graduated from 6 in May last year, and it was one of the best days of my life, and Mom was really proud because she has worked so tirelessly to make sure that I had opportunities which she could only dream of when she was my age. And when I graduated, I even topped the whole year, scoring the highest marks in both science and mathematics. And because I felt I had received a lot from St. Jude, thanks to my education, I wanted to give back by participating in the Beyond St. Jude Community Service here. And I've seen my fellow Tanzanian school students struggling for many years in the government schools without enough teachers and learning resources. And so I wanted to help by volunteering for 1 year as a teacher at Mringa Secondary Government School, the school I would have gone to had I not been lucky enough to have obtained St. Jude Secondary Scholarship all those years ago. So what do? I teach physics and mathematics to 250 students across 4 classes, and the school where I teach has more than 1,500 students, but only 3 physics teachers, including myself. And so the students really appreciate me being there to help them. And in the coming video, you'll see how my community service year internship at Mringa Secondary Government School is helping me a lot to develop my leadership skills, and most importantly, helping the students who have not had access to the same quality of education that I had. So apart from teaching, we are also gaining a lot of knowledge and experience, which will eventually help us when we go to university. And where am I going to go to university? Well, I'm very excited to tell you that thanks to my education at St. Jude, the school has helped me to secure a full scholarship to study electrical engineering in New York. That means I can return back to Tanzania with the knowledge and skills to help in transforming my country. However, there will be no way I could even think of working in the Tanzanian energy sector had it not been for good people like you who have sponsored an education for students like me at St. Jude or donated to the school. And as I stand in front of you, I'm not alone. I represent 1,800 students back home in Tanzania who wants to say thank you for your support, that they are able to get education, and some of them are not yet sponsored. And so my personal request to you is please consider sponsoring one of my fellow students today so that tomorrow they can help me to change my country. So if you're interested in sponsoring or donating to the School of St. Jude, we have some brochures and USBs which are on the table at the back of this room. So you are welcome to have as many as you wish. And the most important thing is you will help us to spread the word, and I'm sure all of you can do that. So just to recognize one of the very important person who has helped us to spread the word, so that I guess every one of you now knows about St. Jude. So welcome, Faye, because I'm having a small gift of thanks here to give you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, the absolute coincidence, 3 years ago my son went to St. Jude's. It was on a thing that he did as part of a school trip. The purpose of that was to raise money, but also to show people here in Australia just how privileged they are in many ways relative to other people in the world, and what a small thing that we can do makes a big difference to other people. My son was really clever. He probably gets that from his mother rather than from me. But what he did, he came into the office here and he went round and he went and said to everybody in the company that he met, for every $1 that you give to go and raise a sponsorship for his trip, his father would match it. And so people like Stephen Matthews couldn't open his wallet fast enough. So, it was very good. So that, my son on that trip, he raised up about $6,000 for the school. And when you look at it, a school that, that's a small amount, over $5 million a year, US dollars. So in Australian money, that's like $7, $8 million a year to do that. And the space of 17 years to go from 3 students to 1,600 students and growing. It requires a lot of effort. I don't think anybody that did a business plan like that, going back to your original story, and said, in 17 years I'm going to go from 3 to 1,600 to 2,200. You go, yeah, I've seen that. It's called a spreadsheet. And the real world isn't like that. So the only reason why this is successful is if people help. So I really urge you to do that. I will gladly extend what my son did. For every dollar that you guys give today, I will match it on you. So, here's your chance. You can make it hurt. So really encourage you to be generous. Really, Gemma, it's so great to meet you. But my son my son's over at university in New Zealand at the moment. He was texting me about he's got a car bill to pay, which I have to do. And I said to that Gemma was here, and he was really surprised and pleased to hear that. He enjoyed the trip immensely. Please, if you're ever in East Africa, take advantage. Go to the school. It's an experience according to my son, you'll enjoy so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for what you're doing. It's part of the global community that you're creating. It's really important. Please, let's see what we can do to help. Cheers. Thanks, guys.